I absolutely adored these rustic pressed flower pieces I found on Etsy. And I've personally never recreated pressed flower pieces, but I'm gonna do it my own image, starting with these Dollar Tree wood hanging decor pieces. And people, there are a lot of different wood choices for you to choose from at Dollar Tree. This is just what I happen to have on hand. I wanna fill those holes up, and I'm gonna use this fluffy spackling. If y'all have not came across this stuff, this is like my new favorite. I picked it up from Walmart for just a couple bucks. Look how buttery fluffy that stuff is coming out just with my finger. It feels exactly like you think it would watching me do that. I have some Christmas crafts I want to make with this stuff. I can't wait for the season to roll around. I mean, I can, but this didn't take too long to dry, and then I just grabbed my little finger sander and sanded down the excess. For the book page portion, I had this joint hanging out in my stash and just went through looking for sections in the book that didn't have paragraph gaps. You can skip this next part if you want, but I decided to do like a rough trace just around the sections that I wanted to put on our little wood piece. So that way, as I was applying them on here, I had less excess overhanging and had a better visual of what I was creating. If you want to leave the whole book page and then take off the excess when you're all done, by all means, do what works best for you. I want the floral section to be really flawless, so I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and put a nice, healthy, thick layer on the top of this wood piece so we can iron on our book page once everything is all dry. It's been my experience that to get some of the best results, let the Mod Podge dry naturally. Unfortunately, that can take a couple of hours. But when it's all dry, then it's time to bring on in the iron. And people, feel free to use whatever iron you would like. I happen to keep this little sucker sitting right next to me at my craft table, so I turn it all the way up whenever I'm going to use the iron-on method and use it to apply my napkin or decoupage. I'm also going to need a piece of parchment paper, not wax paper, parchment paper. Parchment paper is for heat, wax paper is to prevent sticking, just in case anyone is wondering what the difference is. And then I just work my way from one side to the next. The parchment paper helps prevent the Mod Podge from sticking to the iron, along with any bleeding of the ink possibly, or even burning the design on whatever you're trying to create. It's a really nice preventative measure. Make sure to check all around your edges so this way you know it's completely attached before removing any of the excess. Since I don't have any experience with dried flowers, we're going to be using a stencil for this section. And I had this in my stash and figured I could get 2 for 1 here and just cut it in half and use them to create a matching set. It's always a good idea to use painter's tape whenever you're doing a stencil to kind of hold it in place, especially if you're going to be using a lot of different colors like I plan to, so you don't have a lot of bleed through under the stencil. We're going to start this off with the green for the stems, and for the application, I'm going to be using a makeup sponge. Regular sponge, pouncer, whatever you would like is completely fine for stencils. I try to encourage the on-load, off-load method. As long as your piece is pretty much dry, whatever you're applicating on, you don't have a lot of bleed through, so keep that in mind. But I do want to share this little tip with you as to why paint matters. See the acrylic paint and see the background, and we can still see the words in the backgrounds. If you mix a little bit of chalk paints with whatever dominant color you want with the acrylic paints, and then go tappity tap 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 right over the words, it's going to make them disappear. You can still use acrylic paint, but keep in mind you're going to have to do many layers of this to get a nice solid coverage whenever you're using like a dictionary page or a book page or a music page. This just cuts your craft time down in half. Even if you just want to use a solid white chalk paint as a base and then mix in your acrylic colors, it's going to give you more of a solid, quick coverage with probably 2 coats versus 5 or 6 with just acrylic paint whenever you have that background. For the florals, I just mixed up the colors, and I did take a few other colors and create some highlights in different sections. If you want to seal over these, go right ahead. Just wait for them to dry completely. Now, I know in our Etsy piece, they had the brown around the edges, but I decided just to take a little bit of Waverly wax and go around the edges on mine and keep mine mostly neutral. I liked how the wood matched the book pages. I love how these turned out. I love me a good pinecone DIY, and Dollar Tree frames are always good for these types of projects. Plus, I had a subscriber last year send me a ton of pine cones, and I still have a bunch left. So I figured, why not? I mean, this sucker is bigger than my hand. It's like the size of my head, really. All right, maybe it's not the size of my head, but it's pretty big. I grabbed my wire cutters, which is something I've used in the past, to start snipping at the stem of this sucker. And for whatever reason, today, it was like impossible to break through this stem. Sweet mother of baby raccoons. What is this pine cone made out of? What was your tree eating? This is all I got off of that. I was just about to throw in the towel. Has got to be. Oh, yes, Dollar Tree for the win. Since these were way smaller than the ones I was going to use, I decided to go a little bit of a different route and just start cutting them down and seeing what types of shapes I could actually get out of them. And believe it or not, people, these were not the easiest things to cut either. I'm not real sure what is going on with the stems of these pine cones, but prepare yourself because you definitely need some hand grip strength to be able to chop through these suckers. I had these beautiful frames in my stash, and honestly, people, I think these are like one of the most natural looking high-end pieces that Dollar Tree carries in their frame section without you even having to do anything to them. I removed the back so we could take out the little glass pieces and put them off to the side. We're not going to be using them. Instead, we're going to be using some burlap. I had this in my stash, which I usually pick up in a roll from Walmart. You can get a decent amount in larger rolls from there for just a couple dollars. And I cut it down to size just to fit over this little section and glued it down with some hot glue. Our Etsy flowers were all different colors, and since I had to switch this whole idea up, I decided to just paint my pinecone flowers completely white. If you want to glue yours inside the frame, you go right ahead. I left the little clamps on the back in place, so this way I could just clamp them right back down inside of the frame. There are a lot of ways that you could recreate the stems of these, but I had these blue cool looking stem pieces from Dollar Tree that I picked up some time ago, and I thought they would look really awesome and add those rustic features to this piece. Since I decided to keep this so neutral, the blue for me just kind of added that little color pop that I think this really needed. And people, I gotta be honest, I think this is probably one of my favorite Dollar Tree pieces that I've ever made. Aside from those pine cones being so difficult to cut, these were really, really easy to make. And they look so high-end. Decoupage in a basket, right up my alley. However, we're gonna recreate this a way I don't think you're gonna see coming. In my mind, I seen that and thought, mini cute basket with some tumbling blocks. And when I say mini, people, I mean mini. We're using a whole 4 tumbling blocks. That's all the length this little basket is gonna be. For the attachments, I'm going to be using Titebond's Quick and Thick for a long hold and the hot glue for a quick and instant hold. If you've never really crafted with tumbling blocks, it's been my experience that if you just use hot glue, the crafts just end up falling apart eventually. But if I put a little bit of wood glue on there at the same time as I'm doing the hot glue and make sure not to overlap the two, I get a really good hold and the parts usually all stay together. Sometimes I'll even go around the piece with a little paintbrush once everything's all dry and get in them creases with some more wood glue just to make sure my craft is staying together. You'll need a total of 10 tumbling blocks for the sides, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, and 1 on each side. I don't have any chicken wire, so instead I'm going to be using one of Dollar Tree's wire baskets. And I'm going to take my wire cutters and just snip all around the top of this basket until it's completely detached, and then do the same for the bottom. When all you have left is the middle, just pick a spot and just go straight up, so this way you just have one long piece of faux chicken wire. I then assembled the sides using 4 tumbling tower blocks with some more wood glue and hot glue. Now that I have all the pieces that we need for the most part, it's time to paint everything up before we glue it together. For the paint, I'm just keeping it blue, just like our Etsy inspiration. You can use whatever color you would like for yours at home, obviously. I also decided to paint the opposite side white that we're going to be decoupaging, so this way our napkin pops. When everything was completely dry, then it was time to decoupage and start our assembly. The first thing I did was cut the wire down so it fit right in the little window that we created with our tumbling block. Then it was time for us to bring on in the stapler. I get asked this all the time in the comments and I always forget to say something. This is from Home Depot for anyone interested where I got that stapler. Picked it up from Home Depot. For our decoupage portion, I'm going to use this napkin. I do not remember where I picked this piece up or who sent this to me, so in case anybody that's wondering, I'm sorry about that. We are going to remove just the top decorative layer so we can decoupage on here. Then I took a little bit of Mod Podge and went all around the sections that we painted white and allowed the Mod Podge to completely dry. I used a piece of parchment paper over top of the napkin and then ironed down our napkin right on top of that dry Mod Podge. Sanded off any excess and look how pretty this is. Lastly, I grabbed my wood glue and my hot glue and just put everything together. If you're looking for more duping inspiration, check out this video right here. As always, people, thank you all so much for hanging out with me, and until next time.